Hello, you multitudinous, multi-level, multi-mudroads. Or is that mudroads? I can't even read my own handwriting because I write down malt mentions, you see, because that's what we do in this channel. Because I'm Ralphie and it's called Ralphie.com and I review whiskies here from the bothy, somewhere in the middle of the Irish Sea. And a big thank you for that malt mention goes to Stefan Stevanov 6061, who has supplied the malt mention, which just gets this episode of a whisky review up and running. And it happens to be episode 993, in which I'm having a little bit of a mini-series at the moment where I'm reviewing the offerings of some of Scotland's young, new single malt whisky distilleries. They're just getting started, they're getting up and running, and in case you happen to see some of their bottles in your travels, whether you're visiting Scotland or you're fortunate enough to have these whiskies available where you are in Europe or the USA or wherever, at least I'm just giving an opinion and a perspective and a kind of introductory review so that you have your bearings as what you can expect from these new distillery brands. And I've just reviewed in Ralphie Review 992 Loch Lee, which is a lowland distillery. It's a farm distillery. They're producing the barley basically in the fields surrounding the distillery. And now for this review 993, I'm going much further north to the very top of Scotland, to Scotland's most northerly town, and it's called Thurso. And it's pretty windswept, and it does have rather a long winter, but if you are looking to see the Aurora Borealis in Scotland, Thurso is actually a very good place to get lucky. They also have a pile of stones there, which used to be a distillery about 150 years ago called Wolfburn Distillery, which got its water supply from the Wolf Burn. And the wolf references to the fact that the last place that you would find wolves in the British Isles up until their extinction from these islands, from being hunted out of existence, was in the very north remote regions of Scotland. And let me see, it was 2012 that the investors basically built a brand new distillery, but they tapped into the historical water supply. And we're getting a few clues which help us get our bearings on the packaging and presentation. I'll introduce this whisky just shortly. It's saying basically every bottle carefully filled by hand in Thurso. What they're saying is they are bottling all these bottles on location at place of production to basically use local water supply. Now, a few years ago that didn't particularly matter, malt mates, but see now, it does. And this is one reason why we do pay a premium for a new generation of single malt distilleries from small distilleries like Wolfburn, is because they have this provenance and integrity of delivery which simply makes their product more expensive to produce. So if you were to go out today or tomorrow to buy a bottle of Wolfburn, what you'll probably find, despite the fact that they've bottled a number of single casks, private casks and small batches, you'll probably find the 10-year-old, which is mainly a sherry influenced whisky. But I recommend you just go and try it out if you're curious, and if you're prepared to pay the premium, a nominal premium, for a new generation, small, craft, authentic Scotch whisky single malt, made, importantly, by experienced people, because the team at Wolfburn Distillery have quite a bit of experience behind them. In other words, they're not making it up as they go along. They really do actually know how to make whiskey. And I've been really encouraged by this particular bottling, which I'm going to introduce to you shortly, because It demonstrates a little bit of youthful, slightly rough-edged, but characterful single malt experience, which I'm really enjoying, and this is why I've recommended it as one of my look out for new generation of small distillery single malts. Something else they mention here on the cask, which is quite important, is matured and bottled at Wolfburn Distillery. We know, I already mentioned that they're bottling there, but it's produced and matured, right? And this is something small distilleries need to actually say, that they're not sending off their whiskey to somewhere else in a big commercial warehouse to mature. They're retaining the provenance of the situation. They're in fact justifying the premium they're charging. And finally, it's double distilled in small pot stills for fuller flavour. And small pot stills thing, I knew I'd get there eventually, quickly. Small pot stills, you have to watch them. They're like a kettle, you do have to watch them, but there's no doubt about it, they do produce a lot of character. And you see small stills at Arran Distillery, you see small stills at Macallan Distillery. Well, the old Macallan Distillery. So here is a version of Wolfburn which has been around for a while, and if you're looking for this particular bottling, you better look at the auctions because the shops are no longer selling it. But I've been sitting in this bottle for quite a while, as you can see from the fill level. By the way, if you're wondering, if you're outside the UK, that little pink sticker, that is the customs and excise tax paid confirmation. In other words, every single commercial bottle of spirits in the UK must carry a version of this little pink sticker. Otherwise it may be illegal, because it is highly, highly important you pay your customs and excise duty. Otherwise, if you don't, you could go to prison. We don't want that. This is very creamy grain. The nose is fascinating. This particular version is called the Quarter Cask. A lot of information in the label, by the way. Quite an old-fashioned label. And in case you're wondering, the wolf on the label is a very kind of old-fashioned style of wolf that used to roam Europe until it was eradicated. An old style that was associated with werewolves. There we go. Thought I'd pitch that in there. So, get out your steampunker. I'll share a bit of information with you in case you've lost your steampunker. You're trying to read the label. It's bottled at cask strength, or high strength, 54.2%. So extra flavour, a limited release of 980 bottles, because it's a small distillery that's only been running for about 10 years. It's non-chill filtered, natural colour, and the whisky has been matured in second fill ex-bourbon quarter casks. Now this, hugely important information. This isn't just disingenuous flannel. This is actually very useful information for an experienced malt head who's more likely to be buying this kind of whisky to actually get their bearings and know what to expect. Because this isn't first fill ex-bourbon quarter casks. So you've got small casks maturing faster, but they're also more restrained because they're not first fill casks. So what do we get? We get a young spirit. I would put this about 6 years old, right? And it's a non-age statement whisky, but the nose is delightfully fruity. It's like acetone and pears. Wonderful pear note. And it's got a little bit of nuttiness, and it's got a little bit of a clay note. Yeah, unusual. A clay note in the cereal. So we're dealing with hands-on, small batch, relatively inefficient production, which gives us, at the end of it all, flavour added flavour. And when you get that added flavour, you'll find more often than not, you get an enhanced sensation range. In with the flavour. Sweet, salt, sour, bitter and savoury. And this is where this whisky really gets interesting. It's still very young, but that's a good place to get your points of reference as to what the character is going to be like in the future. And I think at this point, the very real challenge for this distillery, which is up and running and it's doing fine and it's got a great future, if it can source the quality casks for the foreseeable future. And I think they're going to have to go to Europe. And I think that European oak casks, ex-barriques, which have been thoroughly rinsed out, are going to do fantastic for this whisky. Just an opinion. What do I know? Just an enthusiast. First taste. Oh, boom. Oh, that's strong. And it's nippy. Sherbety. Very sherbety. It's like fresh baked shortbread with roasted hazelnuts and almonds and a little bit of walnut in there as well. The pear note is coming through. There's some mintiness and a little bit of gingeriness. And I'm going to add, and I know I'm just being over the top here, and I know what you think. Ralphie's adding too much water. Right. No, I'm not. I am adding the water that it needs. That's 2 teaspoons. That's 10 millilitres of water, because that's what I feel this needs as a high strength single malt whisky, to bring it down and make it accessible, so I get the complexity of the experience. And this is really quite an expressive, complex whisky for something so young. And this comes down to the actual new make spirit itself. Now, when you taste new make spirit at a distillery, and you might get the opportunity on a distillery tour, it tells you something about the whisky that's going to be in bottles in the future, but not that much, because it only tells you, well, that white spirit called Cleric or Raw British Spirit, all it tells you is what's coming out of the still. But what's coming out of the still is not whisky. It's basic spirit. It needs to be in casks for a minimum of 3 years before it can be called whisky. And during that time, there's an interaction, there's a connection and interaction, and it's really quite complicated. And you can get some whiskies, they just bond with their casks, and other whiskies, they struggle. They need more time. They need more cask management. And with this whisky, I think that they're going to have to be careful with their casks. Weak, feeble casks will be overwhelmed by the spirit, because it's big, powerful stuff. Fascinating, actually. I've never tasted a whisky like this before. You can see already the Scotch mist appearing in the glass, a sure sign of authenticity. And I'm rolling the spirit around the glass and I'm seeing real thick, even now I've added water, real thick legs on a relatively thin coat line. This is all the evidence building up to coming back to the smell. Pear, peach, soft banana, ginger, some mild cola, slight nuttiness, slight linseed note, savoury note, an umami cereal note. What I really enjoy about this experience, which you can see, I mean, I've been doing my research because I have to do my research, and I have to say I've been thoroughly enjoying my research. But to get such a young whisky with so much character early on is just memorable. I'm really, really enjoying this. I will be coming back to Wolfburn in the future. But I must add, I'll be looking for bourbon matured Wolfburn, and I'll be looking for refill cask matured bourbon. refill cask matured ex-bourbon. I think, having discussed it with malt mates, this is really where the distillery sparkles. If they're producing a peated whisky, a lightly peated whisky would be absolute banger. It's a perfect example of a really good quality contemporary single malt, which is an absolute delight to be reviewing for you. I only wish there was enough of it at the moment that more people could experience it. What has been bottled so far has had mixed reviews, and I suspect one reason for that is because it's a real old school, complex, love it or hate it style of Scotch whisky. I have that much experience. I'm looking for these awkward critters. These critters that make you think about the whisky you're drinking, that demand that you do not rush them, that you take your time and get to know them because they're worth getting to know. So, excellent stuff, very enjoyable, very young, is kind of costly, not for the whisky beginner. Let me state that. Not for someone who's just got a couple of years in whisky, but if you've got over 5 years in whisky and you've got a little bit of an extra budget and you're looking for something exotic in single malt whisky, for your experienced palate, have a consideration of Wolfburn. At the moment, they only really have one bottling commercially available that's easy to get hold of, relatively, for a small distillery, and that's the 10-year-old. But I really look forward to see what they bring out later on, especially bourbon cask matured versions. And that's my penny's worth. That's me said what I want to say, malt mates. So I'm going to have to give this a mark. And I'm giving this a good mark, actually, for character. I'm giving it for character. Still very young, but there again, when it's young, characters are bold and they're strong and they're right in your face, and I do like that in a whisky. 83 out of 100, and that is, of course, Malt Mark. Now, having completed this review, I'm going to invite you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I also have a Patreon channel for those who want extras and live streams, and also I'm heading towards Ralphie Review 1000, and near the time I'll tell you what I'm going to do to celebrate this milestone, and it is a bit of a milestone. But in the meantime, before that happens, how about Ralphie Review 993 Extras, because that's the video that's coming up next. Now where's that Clivey clicker? Oh, here it is.